All right, let's jump right in. We're talking about some truly mind-blowing financial news coming out of Sri Lanka Customs. Seriously, it's a story about targets not just being met, but absolutely shattered. And it tells us so much about the country's economic pulse right now. So just let this number sink in for a second. 175.4 billion rupees. And get this, that's not for a whole year or even a quarter. That is the revenue Sri Lanka Customs managed to collect in just the first 22 days of January 2026. What an unbelievable start to the year. And this is where it gets even more wild. The official target for the entire month was 160.2 billion. They didn't just hit it, they soared past it by almost 10%, and they still had more than a week to go. This isn't just a good month, it's a full-on revenue tsunami. So that raises the big question, right? Is this incredible January performance just a flash in the pan, a complete fluke? Or are we seeing a much bigger, more important trend playing out here? To figure that out, we've got to zoom out a bit. And wow, this slide really tells the story. In 2025, Customs brought in a record-smashing 2,551 billion rupees. That is a massive 64.2% leap from the year before. And on top of that, they beat your own revised target for the year, which tells you something pretty fundamental is shifting. Okay, so we've nailed down the what, a historic, record-breaking surge in revenue. So now let's get into the really interesting part, the why. What's actually behind this incredible financial performance? It really is the million-dollar question, isn't it? I mean, a jump this big doesn't just happen out of nowhere. It's a mix of deliberate new policies and a recovering economy, and it really all boils down to three main drivers. So here's the game plan that's been working. First, you've got much stronger enforcement. Officials are really cracking down on things like under-invoicing. Second, valuation practices have improved, so they're making sure the right amount of tax is being collected. And third, import volumes are finally bouncing back after those really tight restrictions during the 2022 crisis. No, this is so much bigger than just a story about the customs department. This revenue surge is basically a critical lifeline for the entire nation's economy. To really get it, let's put this into the context of Sri Lanka's journey over the last couple of years. This timeline really lays it all out. You go from the really tough times of the 2022 economic crisis, which forced these harsh import restrictions, to 2025, when the country enters an IMF program with really strict financial targets. And now, in 2026, this huge customs revenue is giving the government a much-needed cushion to help meet those targets and stabilize the whole economy. But just when you think this story is all good news, it takes a really fascinating twist. You see, despite breaking all these records, the government's own outlook for the year ahead includes a target that is, well, surprisingly cautious. Okay, look at this. It's kind of strange, right? After collecting that record 2,551 billion rupees in 2025, the official target for 2026 is actually lower. It's 2,207 billion. That's a 13.5% drop from what they actually brought in. So why on earth would they aim lower after such a ridiculously successful year? And there's your answer. It turns out the government is bracing for a pretty big drop in one of the single biggest sources of customs revenue, importing cars. It's a perfect example of how much a country's revenue can depend on just a few key high-value sectors. And this all leads us to the final critical question. We talked about those three pillars holding up this recovery, but if one of them, high-value imports like cars, starts to crumble, can the other two pillars, like stricter enforcement and better valuation, really hold up the full weight of Sri Lanka's financial recovery on their own? That's the challenge, and honestly, the big unknown facing the country right now.